Turkey's economy has been in a state of freefall for some time now. But why? Even before the pandemic, the lira was devaluing against the dollar. Does it have to do with the Turkish president, whom many have faulted for the drastic downturn, or are the economic policies of the central bank to blame? That's what we're going to try to find out in this edition of Economic Divide. Coming up in this program, the fall of the Turkish lira. What is causing it? 70 to 80% devaluation against the dollar, causing all sorts of problems like inflation and debt. And the FATF listing does not help things either. Moving on to the Turkish president, some of his actions are under the microscope. For example, the sacking of 3 central bank chiefs does not help confidence in the country, or pushing a rate cut despite soaring inflation. Is he guilty, as some say, of authoritarian rule? Those are some of the questions we'll try to answer. And then finally, we're going to take a look at geopolitical tensions caused by the Erdogan administration and Erdogan himself, like Syria's military incursion, rifts with the EU and the US, causing capital flight.
Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Defiance.
Tamamen hukuk içinde yürüyen bir davayı bahane ederek Türkiye'yi askeri ve ekonomik alanda çökertmeye yönelik gayretler içerisine girilmesini hiçbir mantıkla izah etmek mümkün değildir.
Even in the face of threats, like from the US.
I will wipe out his economy if that happens. I've already done it once with Pastor Brunson. I'm sure that I hope that he will act rationally.
For posturing, that may be okay. But what if it has to do with the economy? The lira continues to devalue against the dollar, yet the Turkish president believes it is temporary.
Peki döviz kuru ne olacak diyenler varsa onlara da cevabımız şudur. Bu da geçer yahu olacaktır.
The Turkish people are running out of patience. Price of everyday goods continues to increase, with inflation now around 20%.
Bizim maaşımız ya da gelirimizde herhangi bir artırım olmadığı gibi tabii bu olaylar, bu artırımlar, zamlar bizi eksi olarak etkiliyor, anında etkiliyor.
There are those who are optimistic, not wanting to believe the reality of the negative economic indicators.
Euro ve doların şu anda yükselmesinin nedeni dış güçlerin ekonomik anlamda Türkiye'ye baskısı, gazetelerde okuduğunuz gibi doğrudur. Suni bir yükseliş vardır. Seçimlere 5 veya 10 gün kala bu yükselişin tersine döneceğini düşünüyoruz.
Fitch Ratings Agency has even expressed concerns. They are not sure about the central bank's independence in the wake of comments by the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. And what were those comments? For Erdogan to have a greater say in monetary policy. And that was in the year 2018.
Ani yükselişler, ani düşüşler ekonomideki güveni sarsıyor. Bu çok önemli. Bir de burada şunu ifade etmek istiyorum. Burada devletimizin yanındayız demek, hataların yanındayız demek değildir. Eğer bir yanlışlık varsa bunu ifade etmek lazım.
Will the Turkish president's gamble on the economy pay off? Or will he be forced out of office?
It's time now for a look at the social media activity on Turkey. Right from the start, we picked up on a tweet that was interesting and, in a sense, patriotic. It's from Real Economy TR, and it said, "We stick to facts in the face of those who seek to manipulate Turkey's strong economy." The Real Economy TR is at Bosphorus Global Project. But what is @Bosphorus Global Project? Well, one thing it does, it fact-checks anything about Turkey. It says we are actively using media tools to provide correct information on Turkey to national and international public. Now, scrolling down this website, we reach a section called the Real Economy. We click on the icon Real Economy and we enter another space. Here, articles on the Turkish economy and the wider world are written with an upbeat assessment of the Turkish economy. Now, that is interesting because that is not the case when it comes to the economy of Turkey. This tweet mentions what we have covered, and that is that it talks about the Turkish foreign policy aspirations of the Turkish President Erdogan. It says, while Turkey's foreign policy overtures are visible today from Libya to Kashmir, its economy does not hold strong on long-term funding of such ambitions. Okay, let's get an idea about how Turkey's economy is doing from Arda Tunca. He's an economist and columnist at politikyol.com. He's very critical of Turkey, and the website does not hold back on that. It says, Politikol was established to provide an environment for an intellectual intervention in every field in Turkey. Okay, Arda, welcome. So when you take a look at the way that Turkey is moving forward with its economy, there are lots of factors that are involved here. You can talk about foreign policy. You can talk about the Turkish president under that foreign policy, the way that it has steered Turkey in different parts of the world. And of course, the technical aspects of Turkish economy that have been unraveling. Tell us what is going on.
So the central bank does what is imposed on it. So it comes from the government. The pressure comes from the government to reduce the rate of interest for the sake of reducing the rate of inflation. But Turkey has been doing just the opposite of the teachings of the science of economics. Unfortunately, the inflation rate is going up. It is very close to 20% these days. And producer price inflation is actually much higher than this. It's more than 45%.
Okay, well, structural reforms is going to be very hard for Turkey to do, something that our guest there just talked about, because the FATF, the Financial Action Task Force, has had some bad news for Turkey. With the entry of Turkey onto this organization, we took a look at this entry. Erdogan's neo-Putin dreams get a reality check. The FATF said that Turkey was admitted to its list due to things like money laundering, non-adherence to UN sanctions, and terror financing. Well, Bartu Soral joins us now for feedback on this. Bartu Soral is a development economist and writer. He is also the former program manager at the UNDP, that's the UN Development Program. And in his resume, he's also listed MDE Dalhousie University at Canada. Okay, welcome. Let me get your idea here about this FATF listing, because obviously it's going to make Turkey, make it much harder for Turkey to grow out of its economic crisis. And of course, we have Erdogan also that's been faulted for its Ottoman Empire aspirations to be another reason why Turkey's economy is somewhat at a standstill.
Thank you for your question. Actually, I found the question a little bit, tricky by saying this Ottoman Empire time, which I don't believe. The first thing here is the Financial Action Task Force. Who are behind this Financial Action Task Force? I know very well that United States of America is behind this Financial Action Task Force. And when you look at the website of this FATF, it says that, like they review money laundering and terrorist financing techniques. And it's also, say that they also work to stop funding for weapons of mass destruction. Okay. If this is the case, if FATF is working to stop funding for weapons of mass destruction and also to prevent organized crime, corruption, and terrorism, then United States of America should be the first line of this list.
Okay, some great points that were made there. So it appears that there are lots of criticism leveled against President Erdogan from things that we've covered here somewhat briefly. And of course, he better be careful because the opposition in Turkey is not sitting idly by. Alliance of the two main opposition parties is polling ahead of the governing coalition. This is what this is saying. Turkey's shaky economy is the main reason. Now, Ilhan Tanir writes, writing on the wall, Turkey deploys more troops to northern Syria and threatens the Syrian Kurds while its economy is tanking. All Western countries, including the U.S., conduct heavier crackdown on opposition and even sent a not so thinly veiled threat to the CHP leader. So are all of these criticisms leveled against Erdogan actually justified? I mean, really, can just one person be responsible for what's going on in Turkey? In this case, the economy, which is our focus. Well, please tell us what you think. Write to us. Our links and addresses are on your screen now. It's time now for our Info News section of the program. As usual, there were lots of stories to cover, but these are the ones that we chose. First, we go to Italy. The G20 summit took place recently there. As usual, there were the demonstrators that made news next to promises by the G20 leaders. One thing that was announced, this corporate tax rate. It was endorsed on the minimum agreed amount, which is 15%. But at the same time, there are accusations against this deal. It's reported that it's going to make rich states richer, but will actually leave the poor in the dust. Some say no surprise there. Moving on to our next story, a fishing rights row. Now, this story somewhat boggles the mind because of how big it has become. And this row is between the UK and France. Now, the problem is that it centers around licenses for French vessels who are seeking to fish in Britain's territorial waters. The UK is giving the French fishermen a hard time, and that's one of the problems because of how the vessels want to actually fish in Britain's waters. And this problem could go either way. It is said that there are going to be sanctions that the French are going to level against the British. And what's scarier is this. The dispute is set to go on for the next 5 years, according to some analysts. And that just shows how big the problem is. Next piece covers Lebanon. There has been a fallout there. Saudi Arabia has actually banned Lebanese imports and has expelled the ambassador over comments made over the Yemen war. This was made by the information minister, George Kardahi, who called the war in Yemen a Saudi and Emirati, quote, aggression. Now we ask, is there a plan made behind the scenes to actually squeeze Lebanon economically and as a result blame Hezbollah, which then in turn usually the blame goes on Iran? That's something to think about. And our final story takes us to the U.S., the labor shortage there that's been reported so much. There's one analyst that says, don't believe it. He said that American workers are fed up with lack of proper benefits and they're demanding their rights before joining the workforce, something that has prevented Americans from going back to work. Turkey's economy is in a crisis mode. There's no doubt about that. But why? Well, if there's one single factor that can be attributed to Turkey's economy unraveling, it's the fall of the lira and the depreciation of it. Let's first start with that. Now, the lira, as you can see, has depreciated. In this case, we took from the years 2012 up to the present moment, 2021, by 80%. That's quite a lot. And for the examples that we used here, we looked at the year 2018, minus 42%, again, compared to the dollar, that is, and then minus 20% at this point for the year 2021. That's how much value it has lost. A dollar, in terms of what it can now buy, is another point of focus, 9.75 liras for the year 2021. This exchange rate stood at less than 7.4 liras at the start of the year, that you can see over here. And just for a point of reference, we went to the year 2017, and it was 3.5 liras. So you can see the difference there. Let's look at inflation. Inflation obviously is something that hurts the economy no matter how you look at it. And we are going to take a look at that here. 2015 for Turkey, the inflation rate stood at 7.2%. Now take a look at the year 2021 that we're in right now. It has crept up all the way to 20%. So I shouldn't say crept up, it has shot up to 20%. Now the consumer prices as a result have spiked. Turkey's consumer price inflation speeding up to 19.58% year on year for the month of September. Now we used this as an example of inflation, and we took meat and how much the price used to be and what it has turned out to be now. 1 kilogram of meat in Turkey used to go for $6.5, and at this point that has shot up to $13 a kilo, which is a little bit more than double in a matter of 1 year. So obviously the consumer there is hurt when it comes to, in this case in point, meat. And that goes for a lot of other products, obviously, when you have inflation. Here we have the unemployment rate. Now, it's not as bad as it should be, in a sense. The year 2016, it stood at 10.84%. 2021, 13.4%. Still not that bad. It could obviously go lower. But the youth unemployment is a matter of concern. That has come to the percentage of 22.7%. Again, we're in the year 2021. That could go either up or it could decrease. Now, the case of foreign reserves is another point of concern. Spending more than taxing is how we see things. It was reported that a $25 billion hole or shortage was exposed. Then $140 billion in spending in 2 years was additionally reported. So if Turkey is spending beyond its means, this may point to a very doomsday scenario that the government coffers are running very low, meaning that it is spending more than it is taxing. So these two obviously are very concerning. But the story is much bigger than that, actually. And this is what caught our attention when looking into Turkey's economy, that Erdogan has hidden an economic disaster deep in Turkish banks. And it went on to say that he won't be able to keep the game going for much longer. Obviously, that's an eye-catcher. And what is that game? Well, when COVID hit and the economy started to suffer, Turkish banks propped up the lira with dollars that they had borrowed. So you have the Turkish banks, they saw cheap interest after the 2008 financial crisis. They bought up a whole bunch of dollars. And then what happened? Because of that, the spending of dollar reserves, since the economy was not doing that well, they spent that to defend the value of the currency. So that works as long as you have dollars to spend. Now, when dollars run out, the problem is compounded, as it did for the Turkish central bank. So what are the side effects of a weakened currency? Well, you can see it over here. Imports, it's going to get affected, becomes more expensive. You have inflation that rises for consumers. We mentioned the meat as one example. Foreign denominated debt becomes harder to service. And then you have the deficit, of course, driven largely by dollar-denominated energy imports, which inflates as a result. Okay, rejoining us now for a look at Turkey's economic woes is Bartu Saral, who's a development economist and a writer. Okay, Bartu Saral, looking at what has happened over here, there's obviously points of concern for the Turkish economy, and we're looking at things like inflation, like debt, like the reserves running out. How do you assess Turkey's economy?
International financial system is a mainly corrupt, and they do not target the development of the countries. Rather, they want to control the country's interest rates and exchange rate as well. Why? This is what we call as a currency war. Because the value of the currency, its overvalue or undervalue, directly affect your foreign trade actions.
All right, let's see what Arda Tunca thinks. He rejoins us to give us his reaction to this. Arda, we know about the Turkish economy, that it's not doing well, obviously. We had our guest there talk about a couple of things there. What are your thoughts about the way that the Turkish economy is unraveling as it is, which is something that started back in the year 2017, roughly?
Unfortunately, the inflation rate is going up. It is very close to 20% these days. And producer price inflation is actually much higher than this. It's more than 45%. And Turkish economy has been relying on short-term financing. But in this case, we have been telling in lots of newspapers and on TV channels that Turkey needs structural reforms in order to get rid of the heavy reliance of short-term financing.
Turkey's economic crisis is due to a variety of factors, but many of the economic problems emanate from the Turkish president himself. Take the decision by Erdogan to expel ambassadors of 10 countries, including Germany and the United States. This had to deal with the ambassadors demanding the release of businessman and philanthropist Osman Kavala, held in prison for 4 years without being convicted. His charge, well, wasn't even formally charged at first. After spending over 1,100 days in jail, he was charged with attempting to overthrow the constitutional order of Republic of Turkey.
Viyana Sözleşmesi'nin 41. maddesine, yani ülkelerin kanunlarına ve nizamlarına uyulacağı, iç işlerine karışılmayacağı taahhüdüne bağlılıklarını ifade eden bu büyükelçilerin artık Türkiye'nin egemenlik hakları konusundaki beyanlarında daha dikkatli olacaklarına inanıyoruz.
Many Turks were astonished that their president had taken such a drastic decision.
Declaring ambassadors of 10 countries at the same time is unprecedented in Turkey's history, and it might as well be unprecedented in world history as well, and will naturally have significant consequences for Turkey.
Even though Erdogan backed down from his decision, the damage was done. The Turkish lira skidded to another all-time low of 9.85. This created doubts on foreign investment. Combined with unease over the central bank's sharp rate cut last week, market volatility became worse and sent Turkey's sovereign dollar bonds tumbling. But Turkey's economic woes don't start from here. This is Turkey's situation in 2018.
This is a very heavily indebted country. It has inflation, which is in double-digit figures. It has a deficit, which is quite large. It's still about sort of 5 to 6%, but not huge. But nevertheless, it's there, and it's a burden. And he has, of course, been pushing quite a lot of growth in the economy with all sorts of projects. That in itself was unsustainable.
And of course, Turks are feeling the price of everyday products to go up. And they are not too happy about that.
Çok kaygılıyım. Memleketim adına da gerçekten çok üzgünüm. Yani umarım düşündüklerimiz gibi olmaz ama ben yani sıkıntılı günlerin, daha kötü günlerin bizim yanımıza geleceğini bekliyorum. Yani artık ailede 5 kişi çalışıyoruz ancak inanın boğazımızı doyurabiliyoruz. Bu şekildeyiz.
Yet, the tourists with foreign currency who are the real winners of this lira devaluation.
The lira is devaluating every day. We check the price of the lira every 2 hours, and there is a significant change. So for shopping, for tourists, this is blessing.
Many economic problems that Turkey is suffering from have been made worse due to the Turkish president himself, who has been blamed for authoritarian rule. For example, in the 2018 elections, Erdogan appointed 16 loyalists to ensure that he remains in charge of decision-making and policy formation, including his inexperienced son-in-law as finance and treasury minister to manage the economy. He is famous for sacking central bank chiefs. In 2021, he has sacked 3 central bank members. Turkey's currency plummeted to record lows in response to a sharp interest cut. Economists viewed this as confirmation of the central bank's loss of independence from President Recep Tayyip Erdogan.
Olurdu. Şimdi Türkiye sanki kuralları olmayan bir ülke oldu, kaidesiz oldu, hukuku olmadı, demokrasisi olmadı. Şimdi tüm bunlar etkendir. Yani sonuçta.
Then there was a case of an American pastor who was detained for 2 years. Andrew Bronson was arrested over alleged links to political groups, including banned Gülenist movement, after a failed coup attempt in 2016.
Bence taviz vermemeliyiz. Çok uzakta olan bir ülke bizim için. Ama bu bölgede politik gücünü göstermek isteyen de bir ülke. O yüzden yapacak çok fazla bir şey yok. Direnmeye devam.
As you just saw, the Turks were behind their president there. They even heeded his call to cash in their dollars for liras, so the country won't run out of reserves.
Every day they are changing about the 100,000, maybe 300,000, but some days they are coming us to $50,000 and $100,000. They are changing. Turkish people is supporting to the Erdogan. We are doing this for our economy.
The Turkish president's foreign policy adventures have also come at a cost to Turkey's economy. And it has been blamed for creating tensions with many countries as a result, even the US. All of this has come at a cost for Turkey and the Turkish president, whose popularity, along with his party, has dropped to an all-time low. With the 2023 elections coming up, many are speculating that Erdogan's time as president are numbered. That does it for my part. Please send us your comments or questions. Our links and addresses are on your screen. It's goodbye until next week.
Turkey's economic problems will get solved eventually. At least they hope so. But to blame the Turkish president only, that would be wrong and the unfair thing to do. I mean, after all, the COVID pandemic has impacted major economies around the world. But one thing Turkey can do is what it did a while back under its former president, Abdullah Gül. Zero problem with neighbors. Now, this could be a great start in making a difference, especially when it comes to the economy. That does it for this edition of Economic Divide. Your questions and comments are always welcome. It was great having you on board. Until next week, I'm Kaveh Tawi. See you then.